The courts must subject those suspect restrictions to the most rigid scrutiny. By most rigid scrutiny, the court meant careful judicial review of the government's stated rationale and evidentiary support. Nothing short of the gravest imminent danger to the public safety, pressing public necessity, could legitimate the racial restrictions. Accordingly, to pass judicial muster in the World War II cases, the U.S. government bore the burden of establishing that West Coast Japanese Americans posed the gravest imminent danger to national security. Ironically, for the next 35 years, often invoking Korematsu's expressed language, courts throughout the country employed this kind of strict scrutiny review to invalidate Jim Crow segregation and other similarly invidious discriminatory laws. Strict scrutiny came to be characterized as strict in theory, but fatal in fact. The one iconic exception, Korematsu. Applied. After announcing its commitment to most rigid scrutiny, the Korematsu majority pivoted 180 degrees. It actually subjected the government's racial exclusion to bare minimalist review, what the Third Circuit Court of Appeals recently characterized as unconditional court deference. Without careful inquiry, the majority accepted the government's appraisal of facts on pressing public necessity recited in DeWitt's final report. The Korematsu majority's passive acceptance of the government's factual appraisal actually started with its earlier Hirabayashi decision. Although the court in Hirabayashi described racial distinctions as odious to a free people, it declined to subject the military's curfew order to careful scrutiny. Instead, drawing on a tainted factual record, it deferred to the government and its claim of urgent need. Nor can we deny that Congress and the military authorities have constitutional power to appraise the danger. It is enough that those responsible for maintaining the national defense afforded a rational basis for the curfew. The court in Hirabayashi also employed what later proved to be bait-and-switch misdirection. It first isolated General DeWitt's curfew order from his other orders. The court then announced that its decision affirming the curfew orders was narrowly drawn. The curfew was far less invasive than the removal and detention, and that its deferential approach to the curfew would not predetermine its later judgment on DeWitt's harsher orders. We decide only that the curfew order, as applied and at the time it was applied, was within the boundaries of the war power. But a year later, the Korematsu majority did what it said the court would not do. It explicitly relied upon Hirabayashi and its minimalist review in validating the far more invasive forced removal orders. Like curfew, exclusion of those of Japanese origin was deemed necessary by the military because of the presence of unascertained numbers of disloyal members of the group. Justice Robert Jackson's Korematsu dissent described the majority's misdirection in Hirabayashi as a shrewd ploy to later avoid close scrutiny of the far more serious forced removal and indefinite incarceration. In spite of our limiting words, we validated a discrimination on the basis of ancestry for mild and temporary deprivation of liberty. Now the principle is pushed from support of mild measures to very harsh ones, and from temporary deprivations to indeterminate ones. The court is now saying that in Hirabayashi, we did decide the very things we said we were not deciding. Indeed, writing on Hirabayashi's approach to judicial review, the Korematsu majority unquestioningly accepted facts never formally admitted into the evidentiary record. Pivotal facts about disloyalty and insufficient time recited in the belatedly disclosed DeWitt final report. Employing a double negative, the majority passively accepted the government's factual justification for the military imperative. We cannot reject as unfounded the judgment of the military authorities and of Congress that there were disloyal Japanese members whose number and strength could not be precisely and quickly ascertained. Justice Black, for the majority, then justified the majority's minimalist review. When an enemy army imminently threatens a particular area of our country with invasion, The immediate responsibility